learning more about Rick Rubin, who went on his released a book this year. Man, I drink that Kool-Aid so hard. And the thing that stood out for me that I've actually internalized a lot from his whole book and his book tour is you can't care what the audience thinks. It's not an ego thing. He says it's actually extremely prideful and egotistical to think that you can be in the mind of a million people. To think that you can guess what millions or hundreds of thousands of people want is insane, right? And he's just like, it's very freeing. Stop caring or thinking you know what the audience wants. Do the only thing you can do, which is be true to yourself. And I mean, Jack is a great example of this, right? It's like everything that Jack does is very Jack. And, you know, Bilal, when he left his Google and then Charity Water, he was pursuing what was more him, right? Like we talked about this, like you just have to be more of yourself because it's actually very egotistical to think you can guess what other people want. And like, man, when he said that, like it's extremely wise.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We got Trung Phan, Jack Butcher, Bilal Zaidi. Do you remember when I used to do those intros, by the way? We don't do that anymore. I think people know who we are by this point. But what's going on, boys? Big episodes coming up. We got AMAs, end of year awards for next week. In full transparency, we're recording both on the same day because it's Christmas next week. What's going on, boys? How's the holiday season kicking off for you?
What have you guys been up to?
I tried to log my.
Go ahead.
Go on. I was just going to say I tried to log my lowest ever screen time hours the last couple
that's
days.
a good. I like
so you
that.
boys, you carry on trying. I'm trying to pull up my graph here, see if I got any meaningful
I'm not going to
difference.
laugh. Jack's like, man, it was amazing. I hit 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Probably true.
Exactly. Down from
Probably
15.
true, man.
No, I had a good run. My son did the Charlie Brown Christmas. He was Charlie Brown. We've been practicing with him. So he smoked it, did a great job. I'm in sad shape, Lucy. I don't know if you guys remember the Charlie Brown Christmas, but
No, I haven't seen it.
Classic.
But Trung, are you still, you just came off a run, you said, yeah?
Yeah, because I ran out of them ketone IQs. Our boy, I'm gonna hit him up and be like, yo, send me the crate, man. Tell me how much. Send it across Canadian. It might not even, man, dude, Canadian Customs might see that many ketone IQs. Like for one guy, it's like, yo, this looks suspicious, man.
You'll be distributing in Canada there, exactly. Anyway, so let's let people know what we're doing. We got AMA. We got some killer questions in there, by the way, boys. This could keep us going for several episodes.
Yeah, incredible.
So we'll try our best to sneak them all in. And if not, we might carry some over for the next one, but we'll see how it goes today.
Hold on, Jack. What was your screen time?
Go on, Jack.
Oh, it doesn't look as impressive, but check it. I mean, visually it looks better than that's the week before.
Okay.
6.5 hours a day. And then look at that. I'm under the average line this week.
Dude, 5 is actually pretty good, man.
Wait, does that say 6 hours 16? Is that what's the
No, 5.
No.
I thought it was 15 minutes down. I was like, all right, Jack, here we go.
The math, like, look, the hours is only an hour a day difference on this, but
Dude.
Mate,
Oh yeah, that's gone down.
That's,
I like
as
that
they
Jack
say,
went
right?
straight to the visuals there.
Graph crimes. You guys know that term. Remember that term,
Exactly
graph
right.
crimes? It's just
Exactly.
change the y-axis, do the x-axis, makes it look way better.
a little log scale on there.
So what I was going to say though, Jack, you have to remember also, like a lot of the 5 hours a day, that was probably just like iPhone always on, man. You're down to probably like 3. Honestly, that's impressive, man. 5 is still impressive, man. I'm like consistently 8, 9.
Well, 5, I had an outlier on the start of the week there too. So I think I was down to like 1 or 2 Thursday, Friday last week, which is, haven't done
There
that
we go.
for it.
Well, you're going to be
lock
back
the
in.
phone away, man.
You're going to be in the 10-12 once this year-end Bitcoin rally happens. You're going to be back in that 10-12.
I need the kale phone, boys.
Yeah.
I need the kale phone.
exactly.
Dude, biggest. Okay, we're not going to spoil that, but let's actually address something. We got a hilarious YouTube comment.
Oh yeah, this is brilliant.
Do you have it? Pull it up.
No, I've got.
I want to give a shout out to the individual.
Go on.
I have. Let's get the name right though. Is there any chance we can?
I'll
say
it
what
up.
it
Here
was.
we
getting
go.
it.
Here we go.
the TLDR.
What's on possible?
Okay,
Can I
yeah,
misread it out? Yo, boys, can Trung say something without shouting? Makes it hard to listen on the headphones. Love the energy, but hate it for real. Beautiful.
You know what?
Go on, Trung.
I'm gonna. My wife has had that complaint for a decade. So like, I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. It's like she says it sounds like I swallowed a microphone. That's what she says. And So I get it, man. I get it. And for our listeners, we'll be very transparent here. Rafa, our legendary producer, and Bilal, like every like fourth episode, they'll be like, man, can Tron like move the mic, or can this guy stop yelling? Like, we need to fix his audio. And remember,
Your audio sounds good right now.
I had that
audio.
$20 mic for the first.
That made it a bit
months.
harder. That would definitely hit the scale on the
You
regular.
got the phone back this week too, I see, Tron.
Yeah.
Your
Back,
kid
brother.
returned
Huge.
it, or did you get a
Huge.
new one? Your
For
kid
what?
hid it. Your kid hid the phone, remember?
Oh, I had to buy a new one. Yeah.
Oh,
He hid it and he couldn't find it, so I bought a new one. And then he told me he's gonna hide this one too, so I take it off now after each episode and I hide it.
I can feel a little Trung energy in him. All right, boys, let's get straight to it because we got a lot to get through. First one up here, NIA in 3 words. What are the 3 words you use to describe your experience of doing the NIA pod this year? Over to you, Jack or Trung. Go for it.
You go, Tron. I got to think about this one.
Okay, first word is a very Jack Butcher word: consistency.
Here we go.
It's a
We've
good
been
one.
Beautiful.
hammering this out, boys. Hammering it out. That's one word. 2 words. Second word, C4.
Are you reading my notes right now? I literally
No,
wrote
you're
those
going to
two.
say C4.
I wrote C4 and consistency, but go on.
No,
Yeah,
well,
perfect.
well, consistency is C4. You know what? I'm going to leave it at 2 words. So I let me finish my thought on consistency. What I mean by this is, like, we've said it ad nauseum now. We're almost 3 years into this. It's clearly not for the money because we've made 0.
Yeah, there we go.
But we do get dopamine hits, man. I mean, we got awesome listeners, man. So there's like
Pay
there's
is not always
benefit.
in dollars, Trunk. You know,
Yeah,
we talk
and you know
about
what? Here's
that
the
on the
reality.
pod.
I think, like we said, we met on the internet. I still haven't met Jack in person. Bilal's met both of us in person. I mean, you guys are homies. Like, well, I've spent more time with you guys than almost anyone else. And I just appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the time once a week. And there's the stuff that we talk about, and there's really no other outlets that I do it personally. So, man,
Yeah.
enjoy.
That's
Third
perfectly
word,
put.
enjoyment. I'm enjoying it.
There we
Very
go.
nice.
That's perfect. Jack, anything to add to that? That was perfectly put by
You
Trunk.
steal a lot of the big themes, but I would say for me, sometimes I come to this like having done completely different stuff all week before it. And I think that, I don't know, I was going to use the word volatile to describe that, but sometimes I'm like dropped into this and it's actually a helpful, like listening to stuff that's going on outside of what I've been doing for the week prior. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. When you said 3 years, I'm like, how have we been doing this for 3 years? It
In
doesn't
May,
feel
in
that
May.
That's
long.
wild.
2.5. We're 2.5.
It doesn't feel that long. It doesn't feel that long. So
I
yeah,
know.
man, time flies when you're having a good time, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think, Trung, you already took most of the words I had there as well. I had consistency, C4 energy, because it wasn't just C4. So for people who don't know that, Trung has been taking a pre-workout called C4 before the pod, just in preparation. He says he goes for a run, but I think he's just hitting the caffeine, the extra caffeine hit. But yeah, no, all jokes aside, that really lifts the week, that getting that energy from you boys. And then, I wrote, this isn't one word, but space to learn, because I think one of the things I realize is, every week, this gives us like a few hours to prepare and read about different things. It's like a forcing function to learn different things, especially when you got all 3 of us are interested in some similar stuff, but we've got different interests as well. And then, whether it's the history stuff from Trung, comparing Nutella to the Roman Empire, or Jack, what he's doing in the crazy world, or his Jack's timeline. I just want to see Jack's timeline on my feed every day because he finds the best stuff. So yeah, that's probably the 3 words for me as well there, man. I actually did, I think, 6 to 7 words, but that's fine.
What are the other ones? Rattle them
Well, I
off.
say consistency, C4 energy, space to learn, which is 3 words on its own. But yeah, I think that's one theme.
That's great.
All right, let's get into some nostalgic questions here. So dead websites from the 90s or early 2000s. What dead websites from the 90s or early 2000s do you miss the most? Shout out to Newgrounds and I can't even say the last one. E-Baum's World.
E-Baum's World. I remember that from the
I don't
comments.
remember that one. I remember
Yeah.
That was
Newgrounds.
literally what I was gonna say. But Jack, I already stole
What
your
was
answers.
E-Bound's
Tell
World?
us
What
what you
was that
loved
again?
about it.
RuneScape, I was going to say. But E-Baum's World, is that
yeah.
the like flash games and video?
Oh, yeah.
stuff?
Okay. I do remember that. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
an
beautiful.
aggregator of Was it games? I can't remember, but I know the name.
No, they put like that's where you see the Jackass videos. Like,
Okay.
Yeah. E-Bound
man.
World.
Early 2000 internet is just unbeatable. Like I think
So
that maybe
good.
that's like you got to try and square that, whether that's just like the glory days of your coming of age time in your life where all the music sounds good, all the everything you experience at that time of your life is inherently nostalgic looking back, but it was a good time, man. The man, the Pirate Bay, the early internet, man.
TPB, a LimeWire.
Exactly, man. Just putting an MP3 to download overnight.
Overnight.
Trying to
I don't know if that's
coordinate.
what you were downloading overnight, Jack. Let's be honest, man. It might be an MPEG.
Mate, yeah, 56K. Man, the days of 56K. A friend of mine actually started lolcats.com. I told you boys this way back.
I think you
right?
mentioned that, yeah.
lolcats.com, which was a huge thing and started a lot of the cat memes on the internet. And he used to be able to make Flash games as well. So we would sit around making these games, publishing them to, I forget the name of all of those. Newgrounds. There was that?
Yeah, Newgrounds was the other big one, yeah.
That was an insane one. Flash games, playing them at school. MySpace, obviously, you got to give a shout out to that.
High Five, that was a little bit later, but...
Wait,
remember
Friendster?
well.
High Five?
Oh,
Bebo.
that was before Facebook. Yeah, Bebo as well.
Habbo Hotel. That one.
Yeah, I've got a few in there. GeoCities as well. If anyone, that was the first website
That was
sort of builder. Like one of the early
Yahoo
website
bought
builders.
that for $4 billion.
And then
Before they bought
they shut it down
broadcast
now,
from
right?
Cuban, yeah.
GeoCities. The GeoCities aesthetic, incredible.
Oh my god!
Wish
and the
we had more of
banners
that.
they would force on it is crazy.
We've gone very homogenized and monolithic in our internet culture, unfortunately, You're experiencing it all through like 3 apps or websites, very different than, you land on there's a hit counter, there's a little
Oh my god!
MP3
Or the
playing.
Flash intro page. Do you remember that as well? That was so
Yeah,
ridiculous. The
Well, you could
worst
get
thing
sued for
SEO.
doing half of that stuff now, like for,
If you're in Europe,
accessibility
definitely.
requirements. Yeah. in
Oh
Europe.
yeah, seriously.
Pink on pink.
What
or,
about forums though? Because I feel like you guys were on the forum life.
I
As
never
well.
did forums.
Overclockers was a big one for me. A little,
That was where you'd make your own computers, yeah?
make
I
computers,
think I was on
talk
that.
about games, cars. That was a big one.
There was one called Realist, word I'm not allowed to say, but that was where I downloaded all my music from. Because when you would be getting the mixtapes going, you people would be uploading incredible music, like all the what are they called, the mixtapes and stuff that you just couldn't even get on LimeWire properly because you didn't know what they were like. The early curators, the Spotify playlist makers of
Little
their time.
DJ sets you could download. Yeah, incredible.
Beautiful. All right, that's a good one.
Hold on. I got a
Go on,
couple.
Trung.
Well, first of all, ICQ. You guys remember that bad boy?
Yeah.
The messenger with the sound. How about that sound logo?
I didn't actually
ICQ.
use ICQ much, but I know it was really big, especially in North America. But I think I used more MSN Messenger. But
Oh yeah,
that was-
MSN Messenger. Dude, I actually had something happen to me. It might have been the same thing. I used Hotmail through university, stopped using it, and then I have no idea but that university account has all the papers I sent to myself, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to get that email back. I just don't know how. Like, speaking of something you used in the early 2000s, like that's something that I used a ton of. ESPN. So let me ask you guys actually, today, I mean, Jack brought it up, is like everything's a destination now, right? You go to Instagram or Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter X, or Facebook or whatever, to get your news. Which websites do you guys still visit today? Actual websites. Because TheRinger.com, Bill Simmons, in the early 2010s when he launched Grantland with ESPN, that was a destination website for me. And the only website I go to now as the destination is The Ringer, ESPN, Drudge Report, and Daily Mail. Like, I will literally click those in my browser.
Love that
That's it.
Daily Mail is in
Daily
your.
Mail,
yeah.
What
incredible,
about?
man.
Do you ever go on Hacker News or anything like that?
Oh yeah, Hacker News. So those 5.
I
are
don't
the
go
only
every day,
ones.
but once in a while.
So do you guys, the question is, do you guys have a destination website you still go to today?
OpenSea.
Okay.
yeah.
It's about it for me, boys.
Jack's the last person to actually still have that as a destination website.
He's got it as homepage. Exactly. No, genuinely, I don't think I have that many that I go once in a while BBC, but I have the app for that. And even BBC, I don't really read that much news. It's just my default type something and check the internet's working site. I genuinely don't think I do. It's mostly coming to me through all the feeds, obviously.
Coin market cap.
That's it. That's true. That's the other pinned tab.
Yo, I'm gonna throw a joke out there if you guys get it. How dangerous is it when you give your phone to someone and they press P into your web browser and it auto completes?
Trung's face.
Yo, that's a joke, people.
That's obviously a joke. Yeah, here we go. So the other thing, do you remember the $1 million homepage? That was pretty legendary. I think we said it in the pod before, but it's the guy who started calm.com or the Calm app, which is, I think, I don't know how much they're worth, but they're a massive meditation app. He started $1 million homepage. That if I just see the visual of $1 million homepage, Rafa, you can put it on the screen. That just feels like 2000s to me. It's like some kid, a university student, figured out, all right, I'm going to just go for it here, sell a pixel for $1 and ask for people to buy 1 million pixels. I'll become a millionaire. And I think
what's the Jay-Z line, Bilal, that you always quote?
Which one?
The Eskimo. Sell water.
I sell ice in the winter, sell water to a well. I'm a hustler, baby. Sell water to a well.
That's that kid. That's $1 million homepage kid.
Incredible. Yeah.
Wait, I got one more.
Yeah,
I got one more thought. I know this one dragging, but this is actually something that Jack said originally. Little psychology corner for our listeners. I love what Jack said about that internet era felt so great. But remember, we're all the similar age, right? We're all in our mid-30s. So quite literally what Jack said is true. This is the reason why most people, you go talk to anyone, the music they love the most will be from 15 to 25. You stop liking new music afterward. It's like a totally psychological thing. Unless you're a huge music file, the music you love in your teens is the one that you truly continue to love. And there's a big psychological paper about it. We'll pull it up in a future episode, but it's like totally a thing.
That's why we all still listen to Sean Paul, isn't it? You know what
Sean
I mean?
Paul, Jermaine Dupri.
Limp Bizkit. Jesus Christ. That was Also, I just found out today, do you know when Sean Paul says Sean Paul and Blue, whatever, apparently he's not saying Sean Paul. I just watched a clip where he's saying Chanda Paul, which is a name of a cricket player called, I forgot his first name, who was a legendary West Indian batsman. And I saw unless it's an AI video, who knows? But I saw a video this morning of Sean Paul and it blew my mind because I've been saying Shauna Paul and Blue
Bilal's
Control.
about to get community noted. There's no chance that's true, bro.
But wait, did you just pull it up? Yeah, here we go. Cricket legends. Sean Paul doesn't actually say Shauna de Paul in his songs. It's a tribute to cricket legend. I will say in the Sean Paul Blue Cantrell, that sounds like he's saying Sean Paul and Blue Cantrell. But Chanda Paul is a legendary left-handed batsman, elegant, up there in the era of Brian Lara for any cricket fans. But yeah, so yeah, that's a huge new thing for us all to know here. All right, let's get back to it. Anything else on that, boys, before we move on to the more serious stuff? Nice nostalgic one to kick us off. All right, alternative trends outside of the obvious AI, particularly Barely.ai. What other alternative trends do you think will shape the tech and media world in 2024, and what are you looking out for? Any thoughts? I would just broaden that out to general trends. I'm a media, obviously we talk about that, but just tech in general.
You know what? I'll bring up the one that we were swapping in our group chats, but you guys also the AI girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
It's called if anybody hasn't seen it, it's called the Digi app. And I mean, I gotta say that video, I've seen it quite a few times. I'm like, this is pretty good. It's like a 13-second video of like a Pixar-looking chick. I mean, Rafa could throw up the video here. First of all, this isn't new, right? As in the sense of an AI girlfriend, a digital companion. But man, it's gonna. I think that is a bit alternative, right? It's a little bit taboo to talk about, and we have talked about in the past of this episode about what's it called, Replica, was the AI chatbot, which had this girlfriend feature, but then they had to turn off the R-rated stuff. But like whoever doesn't have the willy-nillys over that is gonna just print money, right? But then the bigger question is, if you read that tweet went viral of this video of this Pixar-looking girlfriend, she said something along the lines of, "I never met somebody like you. Honestly, like you're one of a kind." And like you can already see how that could rope people in. And actually, I'll bring up our boy Jack Rains had a great tweet. He goes, he says the most, what's the word when there's not a lot of something? Attention is
scarce.
Scarce. He says the most scarce commodity in the future will be Riz, referring to charisma.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
you saw that. He's like, think about the dating game. You used to have to pick up the opposite sex in a bar, right? I'm not just saying male picking up female. It also goes the other way around. You know, girls shooting the eyes and like you get the vibe, you're catching that body language. 90% of the communication is body language. I'm yelling right now, people. Sorry, I'm gonna tone it down a bit. Got a little bit excited. 90% of communication is body language, right? But then it gets into like online dating is now the majority of how relationships meet. And like now you just do Tinder. There's no Riz involved. You either look good or you don't, right? Like, and then now you're not even gonna need Riz. You're just gonna be having this AI girlfriend.
I would challenge that though, because I agree with the in-person Riz is obviously real Riz. It's funny just using the word Riz, but you know, like the charisma, whatever. But and I obviously haven't been on the apps for a long time, but there's still some, you know, the question is like, what is Riz? Like if you have to still attract someone to meet you in person, there's still a middle stage of that. My approach was never, Riz though, mine was always just like, let's try to meet people in person because I don't really believe in texting.
We always talk about friction and cost. There's no cost to sending a DM to somebody with the joke, right? You're not putting yourself on the
Whereas
line.
when you're in person, of course, dude, there's a lot more to lose. Skin in the game.
So I think this will be huge. I mean, it's not huge. It already is. Japan's the best example, actually. There's a word. I believe it's pronounced otaku. It's OHTAKU. It's basically 30-year-old virgins. It's like Japan's version of incels, but it's much more related to what's happened. Japan is like a harbinger of Western society, right? It's like the birth rates are down to 1.0. You need about 2.2 for replacement to replace the population. Japan's down to like 1. Korea is down to less than 1.
What's China, do you know?
China is in a bad place because it's an older population and the
they had the
one-child
child rule. Yeah.
Exactly.
And what is that now? I think a 2-child rule or something like that.
I think it's moved up to 2-child. Don't get me started about the 1-child rule. No, but like, let me, that's a great point though. The whole point is like, Japan is like 20, 30 years of, you know, they've had this debt problem for 30 years, inflation problems, the deflationary economy. People live it well though, right? Japan's a great place. But these otakus, which is like their version of incels, that's been around for decades. And it's grim, dude. Like you guys have people, like 35-year-old males that have like literally never left their parents' basement. And they just game and they have digital like partners. So it's pretty grim. It's actually pretty grim. It feels
sad,
man.
And it is sad, but yeah, it's kind of a weird evolution. Well, I'm going to tie in the second question we had to this so we can just answer it all in one, because this was about alternative trends. The other question, which was related, was about subcultures. What emerging subcultures will have an outsized impact in the year ahead? Where do you see the weird and strange experimentation taking place? So I think, because I had actually written that AI companions as one of the subcultures. I don't know which, they're kind of a similar question. But Jack, what about you, mate? Anything else come to mind on either that or other alternative trends?
I don't know. The AI stuff already feels like it's like getting reined back. Did you see that tweet about like the current GPT-4 is like less powerful than the original GPT that came out however long ago because of all of the like safety measures that have been implemented since? So like in my mind, that changes the trajectory of a lot of these trends. Is like Microsoft sort of nipping that in the bud, the like runaway. And I would need to know, like, I haven't done enough research on this, but the Digi thing, do you know what is powering that? Is that their own
That's
thing?
a great
or are they
question. I don't
plugging
even
into
know.
something?
I think the animations are their own. Apparently, they have Pixar related people. Well, here's the funniest part of that. I don't know if you guys saw this tweet. In the second tweet on that thread, he goes, "Naval is leading the round of this investment," and then like 5 tweets later,
The community notes.
Yeah, it goes. By the way, Naval is not. I'm like, wait. I'm like, how could you fall? You know what I think actually happened? Because I think in an earlier on AngelList, it looked like Naval was involved or in like tangentially. But then maybe he saw the reaction to it. He's like, yo, I'm pulling. I'm out. Like, I saw these comments. People think we're destroying the future of humanity. We're ending bloodlines and things of that nature. But yeah, that was pretty funny, man.
Yeah, that's why.
I wonder, man. I don't know. It's always overblown, this stuff too. You know, like it's definitely not great, but it's like, yeah. It's like the reactionary nature of the response to this tweet is, I've not downloaded it, nor am I going to, but the idea that this is sophisticated enough to keep someone's attention for like 10 years or something, I think is probably a little bit of a reach.
No, you're right. You're right.
But the trend in general is worrying, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like the Wall-E version of like everything being delivered to you. And I think those, like a lot of these things are more symptoms than they are causes of certain things, right? Like what is it? Like the rate of reproduction among young people is so much lower than it has been 10, 20, 30 years ago. And that's all that, like, that's not AI girlfriends. That's just the idea that you have this object in your hand that is like constantly distracting you from pursuing anything of long-term value.
And if you accidentally go to the browser and press P, that's also No, but hold on. No, but you bring up a great point though. The other part of it is, you're right. Larger demographics is this: as the country gets wealthier, women just have less children. This is just like a known fact,
there's like
right?
there's a demographic thing, and then there's like
thing.
the career progression thing, and like equality of sexes thing.
Kids later,
exactly. And like, also, to be frank, it's also more expensive proportionately to have a kid than it used to be in the past. So like, that's another element of it. So I think it depends where you are, but a lot of parts of the world, in the Western world. So yeah, that's a good one. The other ones I had here, I'll just throw out, is kind of in terms of alternative trends outside of the obvious stuff. Again, none of these are complete unknown, but just stuff that I wrote here to jam on with you guys. Health and tech. I think there's still like a huge amount of space for, if you just look at all the industries that have, you know, this is a very analytical way of thinking about it, but a negative NPS, or like, you know, something that people just have a terrible experience with, and the prices have continued to go up. The two biggest ones, I think, are healthcare and education. And we've talked about this on the pod before, where that's related to things that are touched by government versus things that are touched by, you know, pure free market technology, you know, deflationary effects of technology we've talked about. But yeah, so for me, the big one is health, especially in the US. You know, that's still one of my biggest frustrations, is just doing anything related to the healthcare system. Like, I went to a physio recently. I called my insurance company up several times, got it pre-approved, you know, found out the price, confirmed 3 times, and then afterwards I still got charged more than was, you know, agreed upon. And like, it's just, yeah, everything feels like a rip-off, and I didn't really feel like I got anything out of it, sort of thing. Go ahead.
Did you just do your renew your plan, Bilal, this week?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like auto plan, renew $800 a month or something crazy like that. And I'm like, I don't even know.
Mine is so filth.
You've got a whole
like our
family too,
plan
so.
is horrendous.
Yeah.
Well, it's because that's right. You don't have an employer, so you're going to, well, VV. You're self-employed.
Going straight to the healthcare marketplace.
Yeah, exactly.
Without the volume.
Yeah, horrible.
Well, here's actually a good one. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Actually, I'm gonna throw something out there for you guys. I'd like to noodle on this, not to get too political, but anytime there's a big backlash in the political sphere, changing of electorates, I think the DEI thing that's happening with Harvard post 10/7 in Israel, it feels like an earthquake. Actually, it's like you have the oldest university in America, like one of the most important brands in the world, literally the world. Harvard has set the education agenda for the last 100 years. It's a platinum brand, right? It is synonymous with education and excellence and achievement.
A number one brand in education, right?
It is
Definitely.
a number one brand. And
Pretty much.
it has Claudine Gay, the current president. We're not going to get too deep into the politics of it. But she, there's perception she has done a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion related things at Harvard. Her own hiring, in many people's eyes, was a DEI hire in the sense of she has 11 published papers. Most university presidents have way more, and a book. She wasn't like an academic star or a super accomplished in academia. And it's been found out that about half those papers have some form of plagiarism in them. Even the Harvard statement saying that she's staying in her position said that there have been some inconsistencies in her work and that it's being addressed, which is basically admitting that she's done plagiarism. Like, I knew people at university which were expelled for ripping like Wikipedia, right? She's the president of Harvard and clearly not being held to the same standard. There's something going on. Now, the larger question I have is this, and this is a multi-year question, right? Is DEI, Harvard also lost the affirmative action case over the summer, which we didn't get a chance to talk about. But the affirmative action essentially was it was hurting Caucasian and Asian applicants for Latinos and Blacks, and just in terms of pure numbers. Like if you took same candidate, Asian one would have to have like 200 better SAT, 30th percentile better like GPA. And the way that you can easily see this is just look at California. Affirmative action was made illegal in the late 90s. And you go to like their state schools like Caltech, it's like 50% Asian. We can ask now is that admissions policy, meritocracy, like is that the best way? You can ask that question. But based on the way that most universities run it, you got way more Asians, right? It's just how it goes. Asians are really good at tests. That is not a controversial statement, right? And so my question then to you guys is this. Clearly, DEI has hit an end of the road, even in corporate America. There's been, people are admitting, they're shutting down DEI apartments. I'm worried about the backlash though, because certainly you want better representation across different minorities and genders. But the question becomes, what does the other side look like? I mean, we've all worked in large organizations. So I'm gonna throw it to you guys and be like, what would a good middle ground look like, or what would a bad backlash look like? Are
you talking about on diversity representation specifically?
Let's say the DEI wave it's receding now, right?
It's like trend, and then there's like a counter trend to rein it back in, because that often happens. So your question is specific to where's a good middle ground on this topic?
Where do you think this ends up?
Go on, Jack. Any thoughts?
Good question, boys. I was going to say this is going to sound like a joke, but the zero interest rate phenomenon of certain things happening during times of abundance that are ignoring economic reality in whatever way you want to dice that up. Like any massive corporation you've worked at, 80% of what they do is nonsensical. It's like you're sort of surviving on arbitrary agreements between companies that have been, predated 10 years, 20 years, whatever. You might not have the best product on the market, let's say. It's like these things are, your advantage is based on a lot of intangibles, which is the same thing with a Harvard or whatever else, right? It's like to try and say that the Harvard brand carries no weight versus like somebody who is maybe technically more competent, went to a different place. Like all of this stuff is wrapped up in that phenomenon. So I don't think it's like, hey, change this rule and that rule and everything is great. It has much more to do with this underlying like status signaling bias, and like you can't measure things like these are not all qualitative things or quantitative things, I should say. Like in general, that's where the argument breaks down on both sides for me, is like there's no, like, unless you're, very specific applications of skills can be measured I always get these mixed up, quantitatively, right? And the standardized testing stuff, I did horrible at, like, if my test results at 16 or however old determined where I was going for the rest of my life, I would be in deep shit. Like, I was not a good student by any means. But I think a lot of this outside of, if you want to be an engineer or you want to build bridges or you want to like be specifically qualified to do X, Y, or Z, like the idea that you need to lean on these massive institutions for credibility or legitimacy as a trend, I think that goes away over time. You know, it's like this idea of
the importance of those brands in the first place.
Yeah, the
like
importance
the
of the cosine of X is diminishing. And like we've talked about it loads of times about the experience of going to school is very different than, you know, it's very nuanced, and it's not about getting the diploma at the end of the thing. Like nobody's ever asked to see my degree. And if they did, I probably wouldn't get the job. You know, if you actually asked where I went to school versus like, here's the work I've done for the last 10,
check the chain. Check the chain, people.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think a lot of it is those two forces have been fighting each other forever too. Like a lot of the good intentions of like, just publish your work and like have overwhelming proof that you're good at something. You can still lose out to the person whose, you know, dad plays golf with whoever, right? That's just like, those are like entrenched things that have existed forever. And it's like, oh, we're changing this corporate policy to say this. It doesn't do anything. And if you have like no economic downside to implementing that stuff, that's when it just bubbles into this out of control thing.
I could not agree more. I've seen the tweets. So DEI is a zero interest rate phenomenon. The reason it is, though, is because you see what happens in the past, actually since they started raising rates, right? People are just joking about it. It's like, all these big tech companies are across America, they're slashing, unfortunately, 20, 30% jobs. But the reality is a lot of those jobs were quite cush and very undefined, right? It was like...
Yeah, and at the time, there was like this shadow economy going on between that, right? It's like you had to have that in order to do business with these people, or in order to get on this list, or in order to do blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, hey, interest rates are 7% and you can't be fucking blowing your treasury on bullshit. And it's like,
you can't be blowing on DEI consulting, this is just a reality. You go look at the numbers of Fortune 100 companies, they're slashing these departments because I couldn't agree with you more. It's just not the meat and potatoes of what the business is, right? Nor should it be. I mean, these are important things, but we're seeing what happens when you, in times of abundance, exactly. You can start layering on abstract things. I mean, take ESG, right? We've talked about ESG. ESG, look at the backlash against ESG. I think the number one company in Exxon made ESG, right? It's like, you're ticking off things on the box. It's actually
I worked for this company once that did like licensed stuff for Walmart, and they would come around and check like what paper was in the printer, what light bulbs are in the that crazy. Just nuts. It's like Michael Saylor would have something to say about this, boys. Fiat. This is the downstream consequences of
once a week
a currency that has no basis in economic reality, boys.
There we go.
Bilal, any thoughts? Or
I think we could probably do a whole episode on this, so I'll try to be short on it. I think the question originally was about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And so, similar to what you said, I think most of these things go crazy in one direction and then they get reeled back in. And then we also have to remember the context of where things were, let's say 20 years ago in the workplace or in different industries. There was a real need for, I prefer the word representation versus like DEI, because I think DEI now just has this kind of connotation of like forced quotas and stuff like that. Whereas what personally I care more about is representation of different sorts of people and different ideas. And that doesn't just get segmented by race and gender. That's obviously two parts of it. But, there's a lot more to diversity even.
You're right.
Than just, someone who is a brown person, a ethnic minority in the UK, and generally comes from a, working to middle class background as well. That has been important to me because growing up, I now look back and say, oh, that first time I saw someone that sounded like me in a place that I was trying to get to did make a huge difference. But at the same time, when I just see like a forced thing where someone feels like a token person that's in a leadership team or whatever, then it just feels like, well, that's not necessarily what we're going for. What we're going for is still a meritocracy as close as we can, still getting people to be in positions based on merit, whether that's Harvard or elsewhere, but also understanding the nuance of what it takes, that we all don't start from the same place. That's kind of the essence of what the ideas in the first place. I do think most of the time they come from a good place, but like a lot of things can kind of get hijacked by ideological people on both sides. And so I think we're also seeing the other side now where some people are saying DEI is complete bullshit, it doesn't do anything good, etc. And so I think there's just a balance to be had there. And there's also just even on the race thing specifically, since I can talk to that with my experience, like being a brown person in the UK is very different to being a brown person in the US, for example. Like you said, the thing about Harvard discriminating against, or Ivy League discriminating against Asians, right? Like you have to get a better SAT score to go to those schools versus someone else. That's the case. Whereas in the UK, let's say growing up where I went to school and stuff, our kind of experience was closer to, let's say, black people, Hispanic people here, because we kind of lived in the same areas and had the same income levels, same doors open for us, same crime statistics, like all those things that we talk about here. And so that's why I think there's just a lot more to it versus just like blanket statements of, if you are this race, it's so much harder for you. If you are this gender, it's this harder for you. So anyway, we can go on all day about that.
Well, let me add two thoughts just very quickly.
Yeah,
one thing I'll add is that you brought up a great point. It's diversity means across many things, not just race, right? You pointed it out. It's like political views, very important too, right? If you have 5 different nationalities and races in executive, but they all went to Harvard and they all read The Economist and all think the same things, that's not diversity of thought, right? So like, I totally agree. Like there's many vectors, which is important to have. And the other thing I'd mention too, kind of to piggyback on your point, we could end this whole convo on this, is like, to take the Harvard example, they should get rid of all preferential thing. Like think about the alumni and these like random sports that get scholarships, right? These random sports that typically only Caucasians can play, or that is heavily. I mean, think like lacrosse. What is that?
Yeah.
What Vietnamese person is playing lacrosse, right?
You could be the first Trung.
Although I can tell you, well, we're getting our son LT into fencing. We're like, oh, we saw that fencing game, like But I mean,
killing
like,
it.
It's like there's vectors. But yeah, we could talk about this forever. Let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, great discussion. And so I'm just going to wrap up from the earlier question about alternative trends. I'm just going to list out a couple that I had written down here. So I mentioned health tech, and within that specifically, I think there's a few big things. There's hardware, if these were different vectors, the preventative focus and measurement stuff, like we're seeing. There's a company I saw recently, Mark Hyman, who's kind of like a big influencer. Think of him as like a Peter Attia or Huberman equivalent, where they're doing these, it's called Function Health, and I have no affiliation to them. I haven't used them, but they're basically allowing people to do blood tests where you get 500 different markers that help you prevent stuff in the future, versus my experience going to the doctor where I'm paying with my own money and my doctor's literally fighting me to not get certain things tested and stuff like that. There's this kind of weird kind of dance happening there. So I think there'll be more solutions like that. Also, like remote coaching is another big area. Like I've used something like the Knees Over Toes guy, ATG. They've got like a coaching thing where you can basically record yourself and they can you can like view. They'll look at your form and stuff like that. There's another one, Future Fit, where you wear like an Apple Watch and there's like a personal trainer remotely. So I've done that. And anything to do with longevity, like I think there's a lot of areas in that. And then the last couple I'll mention outside of that, there's the crypto next cycle narratives. Because if you think of every big cycle, like 2017 versus like 2 years ago, there was always these new, like there was crypto gaming stuff. There was, DeFi, obviously, stable coins. Previously, there was like Internet of Things. I'm not saying all these things came to be, but I think if you look at 2024, 2025, if we are in another bull market run, for every bull market, there needs to be different narratives, and also hopefully people actually creating real things. So whether that's going to be AI intersecting with that, or social finally having a real killer use case, or
Larry
app.
Fink, Bilal.
Larry Fink's driving force here.
Larry's bags.
Exactly. And then the last couple, I'll say alternative education, which you were kind of just talking about there. That was another area. I don't know, you guys have kids, so I'm curious to get your take. The more people I speak to, most people are like, I don't love the normal system for my kids. I want to at least augment that with other stuff outside, or I want to look at something completely different, like homeschooling, micro schools, all this sort of different stuff. So I think that's a whole different area as well. But yeah, those are the ones that were coming to mind for me. There's a few more, but I'll leave it there.
I think Brian Johnson is launching a product in January as well.
Yeah. Talking of longevity, yeah. But yeah, he's got his company. They're doing a bunch of supplements basically now, based on his methodology, which is quite interesting.
He'll kill it with that, man.
Oh,
He's
my God.
Built an unbelievable distribution.
He knows what he's doing. Even we talk about memes
he's
all the time.
too.
He leans into it. Yeah,
He's funny as hell.
No, but we're talking for people who don't know about Brian Johnson, he's the body hacker. He's trying to make every part of his body the age of 18.
Founder of
including his
Braintree,
penis
right?
And anus, which is literally what he said. Great. No, but I mean, like, he's like, I want my stomach, lungs, kidneys, like penis and anus to be like. But I mean, these are great memes, right? He's like, I measure my
anus,
boner.
I didn't see the anus. It's
He's
real...
like, I
he's
measure
keeping it clean.
how many erections I have a night, which is
he
actually
does.
a very
He does.
strong sign of testosterone.
That's
But here's the point.
vitality.
But here's a really funny thing, though. I read it and I'm like, imagine this guy biohacked himself for 3 years, ate broccoli and cauliflower 4 times a day, just to launch a supplements business that's going to sell at 2x revenue in 5 years.
That is the midwit meme there,
Like,
right, boys?
is
You
this
just
like-
start
was
with
this-
protein and supplements, end with supplements. In the middle, you've got the ice baths and all that crazy shit. Anyway, yeah, that's brilliant as well. All right, cool. Let's move on, boys. This was a question we had here. 3 memorable things each of you learned this year. You can do as many as you want or as little as you want.
Is this going to
come
cross
to
over
mind?
with our best of episode? Actually, you know what? The best,
I think it's
year
fine.
end is different, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
3
yeah.
things I learned. And these 3 things, I don't want to ruin it because when we did the 3 words, you guys go first because I don't want to be the first again on this.
Jack, anything come to mind? Otherwise, I've got a couple written down I already thought about. All right,
You go first. I'll go
All
after
right,
you. Yeah.
Cool. Memorable thing. So I had, this is one of the things that changed. I know this is quite obvious for a lot of people, but the role of exercise, exercise for feeling good versus looking good. And that is like, if you just think growing up, what you think about for running, you go to do sports, whatever, you always think about it as, oh, I'm going to do this because I'm going to be fit. In terms of like how you look mostly, you all obviously were told, oh, exercise makes you feel good. But for me, primarily, exercise is now like mostly about how I feel. And that makes me addicted to it in a positive way, where I want to start the day. I want to get outside. I want to move my body. I want to go lift weights. I want to feel strong and feel confident, all those sorts of things. And that was a big change for me. So that was one. We talked about this episode 103, ideas that change our lives. Walk until the day becomes interesting. If you're interested in that, you can go check out that episode 103. I talked about it on the pod already. And then I think on that same episode, either Jack or Trunk, one of you said the time and energy is a currency. I think one of you said that, unless I said
Probably
that.
Jack. That sounds like
Probably
a
Jack.
VV.
Yeah, exactly. And that's again something we know intuitively, or we've heard it in different forms. But really, if you think about looking back at my last 5 years, essentially, that is what I've been optimizing for, like doing things that give me energy, the anti-goals thing we talked about, not doing things I don't want to do, and then optimizing for complete flexibility and time. That is the most valuable thing for me. So those were the 3 that stood out to me.
So say the question again.
3 memorable things each of you learned this year.
Okay, yeah. 3 memorable.
It can just be one, if nothing. If you don't,
No,
have,
I
cool.
got some good ones. I would say doing deep dives, learning more about Rick Rubin, who went on his released a book this year. I drink that Kool-Aid so hard. Even the woo-woo stuff he talks about, I just listen. This guy's earned his stripes, right? He's seen shit. Like Rick Rubin has seen shit, and the thing that stood out for me that I've actually internalized a lot from his whole book and his book tour, his book, The Creative Act, is he says, and he said this a lot on his podcast, is you can't care what the audience thinks. And the reason he says that is because it's not an ego thing. He says it's actually extremely prideful and egotistical to think that you can be in the mind of a million people. To think that you can guess what a millions or hundreds of thousands of people want is insane, right? And he's just like, it's very freeing. Stop caring or thinking you know what the audience wants. Do the only thing you can do, which is be true to yourself. And I mean, Jack is a great example of this, right? It's like everything that Jack does is very Jack. And, Bilal, when he left his Google and then Charity Water, he was pursuing what was more him, right? Like we talked about this, like you just have to be more of yourself, because it's actually very egotistical to think you can guess what other people want. And like, man, when he said that, I'm like, damn, dude, that's so like, it's extremely wise. And
it's quite freeing, right, as well.
It is. And in the internet age, with the amount of mimesis, which we talk about, social, you're just looking at people living like they just post their best things in life. Instagram is like they're partying. LinkedIn, they got this sweet certificate of Harvard Extension School. And it's like you look at those things and you think you should you can know what other people want. You can't. You can only know what you want. And Ruben talks about it all the time. It was pretty mind blowing hearing him talking over and over about it. He always brings it up.
Can I drop a Navalism on there as well?
Yeah, hit it.
Build for yourself, and you'll always have product market fit.
Boom.
Go.
Game over.
Beautiful.
Well, something
perfect.
so funny about the parallels in their experience, like people who have watched and coached hundreds of people through very different situations to build something, right? Whether it's a musician making an album or it's a founder building a company, the amount of wisdom you gather in seeing the similarities between people that are making ultimately very different things, or the outcomes are very different, but the things that were consistently applied, the characteristics or the beliefs or whatever the things that were the commonalities between the people who managed to figure something out, they tend to be very similar.
David Senra, Founders.
Yeah,
that's what's
perfect
amazing
example.
part of his podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes it so amazing. He keeps bringing it back to like, he's like, oh, by the way, like
he's a
Sam
human
Walton,
wrong research.
yeah. So I'd say that. The other thing I'd add, something I did learn this year because I didn't watch it when it came out last year. Have you guys watched the Beatles 8 Hours documentary?
What's that on, by the way?
So in 1969.
Do you know what it's on, Trunk? Which
it's on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. That sounds
so
good.
1969. Here's a little teaser. I'm 8 episodes into my solo podcast, which I'm doing, which we'll talk about later. But one of them is about Beatlemania. I briefly talk about this, but I'll bring it up here because it's gonna be a while till I release this episode. But I think if you're a listener and you care about creativity, I mean, first of all, let me ask you guys: in your mind, where do you rank the Beatles? Like, just not even your personal feeling about their music, just culturally. Like, they're at the mountain.
Big meme.
Yeah, to me they're up the A plus
Shakespeare.
with Michael
They're Shakespeare.
Jackson. Like there's like that level of
No,
you
but
could
like
argue
in
that-
500 years.
Indisputable notoriety.
people
Yeah,
call me-
in like 500
Lindy.
years, when people look, they're Lindy. When you look back in 500 years, you're gonna talk about the Beatles, probably. Like they're Shakespeare-esque in that sense to me, and what's crazy about them is that they keep like most acts from the 60s, like they're just not as relevant anymore. Even the Rolling Stones, who are still touring, are just not in the same mind share as the Beatles, right? And the Beatles are considered, they're the Hermes of music, like they're the top of the top, they're the apex, right? But what's amazing about Get Back, if we can all agree on that, you're watching these 4 guys, they're not even, none of them are even 30 years old. They're 28 or under in 1969. They're at the peak of their powers. They just released Sgt. Pepper, also a Lindy, super culturally relevant album. 5 years into, since they went to Ed Sullivan Show and blew up, and they're only together for another year after this. So everything they did, I'll bring it back to something Rick Rubin said. Rick Rubin says the Beatles are the proof that God exists. Like their existence, these 4 guys from Liverpool, small, like whatever, Liverpool's a work town, right? You'd expect the best band in UK history to come from London. They're from Liverpool. It's fucking nowhere. Or at the time. So Rick Rubin says the Beatles are the proof that God exists. Whether or not you believe in God, that's what he says. I think it's profound, right? So you get to watch them for 8 hours making music. Like these songs we know, like Let It Be. Everybody knows Let It Be. You watch them make the song Let It Be. And it's just, the amazing thing about this documentary is this. It's just so normal. Like these are, dude, like Lennon shows up with Yoko. She just sits there. They're fucking around on the guitars. And there's no magic moment. There's like, they show up from 9 to 5. They're grinding. These guys show up from 9 to 5. They have insane work ethic. And you're watching them create some of the greatest music ever. And they're eating like old toast. Like they're the most famous people in the world. They're eating old toast. They're working from 9 to 5. They're just dicking around. They spend half their time just dicking around. And then they just bang out these hits. And so why I bring this up is I think watching that is so compelling because if we can agree that they're this Lindy-esque Shakespearean quality, in 500 years we'll remember them, this video of them, this 8-hour documentary, which was made from 60 hours of footage, is initially meant to be a TV documentary and then also a film. They didn't use all the footage, so Peter Jackson spent 4 years, the Lord of the Rings guy. He brought it back all to life, recolored it, took 160 hours of audio, but you're just watching it and you're like, nothing feels superhuman about it. But you're watching something superhuman. That you guys see what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
To be able to watch something that we can all agree is so ridiculous, but then see how normal they are, it's actually very inspiring.
Just smashing some beans on toast, making hits over there.
It's just ridiculous, man. It's like
that's
John
pretty
Lennon,
amazing. I need to check that out.
Greatest writer ever, rolls up. He's like, what is that? He's like, oh, that's toast from yesterday. He's like, yeah, give it to me. He's like, hey, can we get some marmalade here? Like butters up this old piece of toast, bangs out like one of the greatest songs ever. And you're just like, what is happening? But I'll say that it's amazing.
Drunk, not to put them on the same level, but on the plane yesterday, I was watching the old Kanye doc on Netflix that we've talked about on the pod. And again, whatever you think of Kanye, just that first episode, there's this scene where he's with Scarface, the rapper, who at the time was considered one of the best in hip hop, and he just gets this like banging compliment from him, and then at one point Scarface is like, what's that on the table? And he's like, that's my retainer. And it's like, that's the funniest scene to me, because he's literally got a retainer and he's just like this little dorky guy, and it's just amazing to see those early years.
You're watching,
I love it so much.
That's why that happens so much now, right? That's what's amazing. Like so many backs. I mean, you brought up a great point. You get to watch all these artists, and like as it happens,
so good.
But to see what made the Beatles so special is like you wouldn't expect to have that, right? It wasn't like, it was 1969. And
this is before the era of doing stuff like that.
And the myth that's been built up. So I'd highly recommend you know what? It's long. I'd watch the first episode. There's 3 episodes. It's 2.5 hours. That's where a lot of you see them just dicking around. And you're like, wow, like this is incredible.
Yeah.
And then let me add one more thing I'll say is the third thing that I actually read this recently. It's from Venkatesh Rao, really great blogger. But this is a quick one. I want to let you guys noodle on. He says AI is not an invention, or generative AI, it's a discovery. And I want you to think about that for a second. The telescope is an invention. What you see in the telescope, which is space, is a discovery, which means we don't fully know what's going on, right? There's something going on there. I want you guys to think about that, because this is actually Lex Friedman, when he asked Jeff Bezos on their podcast, which is a really great podcast, by the way, 2.5 hours. I listened to it recently, Friedman and Bezos. Friedman asked Bezos about AI. I don't know. So Venkatesh Rao is very widely read, but Bezos said the same thing. And I'm wondering if he borrowed it from Venkatesh, but he said AI, he's like, the way I think about generative AI, it's not an invention, it's a discovery. And then he just kind of left it like that. So I want our listeners to noodle on that. I don't know what the implication is, but it's like
Jack, I saw
sounds
you
profound.
when Trunk said that you had a thinking face. Was there anything that you thought about that? Or
that's cool. A cool frame for it. It is like, I think it's interesting, the idea that you're just combining things in a new way. But you could argue, I mean, it's all, not to get too philosophical, boys, but everything is a combination of new things, right? The difference between like a telescope. Actually, just look back at this book I have. You ever read How Innovation Works? Matt Ridley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
like there was no moment where someone's like, hey, here's the telescope, I just invented it. It was like somebody had a piece of glass and put it over something else, and they put it on a fucking stand, and then they put like all of these
It's like,
things.
what
You
is
look
an
back-
invention, basically, right?
Right, same idea that you were just talking about, Sean, with the even the Beatles, and every like creative endeavor is not this like eureka moment for the most part. It's like grinding it out and changing it 1% at a time or less. And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, all right, let's put it out in the world and see what people think of it. And then people take that and build on that. But yeah, AI is.
What I tease the difference is like, I think what he's getting at is like these things are, like intelligence existed. Like it's just like the universe exists, right? Even before the invention of the telescope, it existed. I think what they're getting at is like the idea for this type of intelligence.
The interface to viewing this
exactly
thing.
is the invention.
Yeah. That's an interesting frame. Yeah. That's cool. Jack, thanks for sharing those, Trung. Jack, any memorable things you've learned this year you want to share? And complete call, if none of these, we can also skip.
No, I mean, there's so many. I like, it's hard to like, most of them are way more personal than they are useful for anybody that's listening to this, but maybe that is useful too.
That's all right. Yeah.
Celia this year, like having a second kid, she did basically all the work because I was like buried with stuff from January basically through August, was just like working 16 hours a day for a fucking long time. So she picked up the entire slack on the family side. So I guess the lesson that I already knew that was reinforced is like, anybody in a situation like mine, it's not happening without somebody behind you doing all that stuff. So
yeah, respect.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
100%.
Then another thing I think comes from like one more interesting one that actually I learned from Celia too, is like, you can like a lot of the interactions I have, or the things that I think are like out of reach for me or I haven't really thought about, is mostly an issue of learning how to communicate certain things. Like I sort of over-index so much on trying to like build this body of work that speaks for me, that sometimes I don't just go and ask somebody, hey, can we do this thing together? Or I have this idea, let's do it. I'm like always waiting. Still now, like I realized this earlier this week more profoundly when I just had a problem. I was like, I know this guy would know. Let me just text. Like, I literally sent one text of like, can you help me with this thing? Comes back this massive response, like, do this, then that. And there's so many other instances where I'm just not doing that. I'm like, let me figure it out myself. And there's so many people that are so much more talented and experienced and willing to help a lot of the time. Then you struggle for no reason sometimes in those areas. And I definitely, like, I haven't even learned that lesson. That's just something that I'm like, shit, I need to get better at that. And then, well, the last one, I would say, sometimes the traveling stuff, like I traveled a good amount this year and it is good and it's fun to do, but it knocks me back so much on my like routine and like everything that gets sacrificed while I'm away. And you think about like, what did I really get out of that? And not that everything has to be this calculated thing, but like, what are the trade-offs for going somewhere for 3 days and being in a different time zone? And like the crypto stuff specifically is like, it's literally the same people that go to every single event. So you see them in New York, and then like 3 months later, like, let's go to Miami and do the same thing in a different place. And it's fun. I'm not trying to say anybody I met this year, I had an amazing time, like talking to and being away from home, blah, blah. But you always like come back and you're like, man, I'm so out of the rhythm. And I basically just did like a cloned experience of the thing I did 3 months before. So that's another ego probing thing where it's like, how much is this actually serving the thing I'm trying to do? If it's like you specifically going to meet people that you haven't met before, etc. But, you know, I'm leaving 2 kids at home to do that. So it's like the and Celia, the trade-off is so much more significant. So another, not even a lesson, but another consideration.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's something that you learned for the year. I think that counts. But wait, the quick jump off. I know we probably wrap this episode soon, but something you said, the second one you said about not asking people, quick psychological thing about that. Benjamin Franklin talks about it all the time, is like people want to help for their own ego. You have to remember this is like when that, like, not to say that there's alternative motives, but when the individual gave you that long list, I'm sure he felt good about it. He's like, damn, I'm about to flex on Jack's face right now. And then, but here's the other thing you have to remember. When somebody opens that first thing of help, now we're talking about psychology and influence. They want to see as somebody that is consistent, that always helps. So now they've introduced themselves to you as somebody helps. It's very unlikely now that they'll go back on that perception they've given you as something that doesn't help anymore. So it's actually crazy. Like Benjamin Franklin talks about this psychology of this all the time. It's like people want to be perceived as consistent. So if you get somebody to start helping you, I mean, like they actually want to keep helping you.
I mean, man, if you have like any like psychopathic tendencies, or like you could just, you know, the world
you
works
could Benjamin
very
Franklin
nicely in your favor, for sure, for sure. Like, I guess that's the thing, is like trying not to reset that and trying to figure out how there's something for both parties to gain in this instance, and you're not necessarily bothering someone. You're like, hey, have this idea that we could work on together, but I can't do this. I'm not capable of Y, blah, blah, blah. Let's do it together. Focus is also the continuing, evolving, like, you know, ever always trying to get better at doing one thing at a time.
Yeah, that's great. They were really good ones. Anything else, Trung, on that from what Jack said before we wrap this up? Because we have lots of amazing questions, but I think we can roll some of them into next week's episode potentially. And we're going to have ones for New Year's too. So we'll see what we want to get going. Yeah, there's some bangers in here. Yeah, that was perfect. All right, let's wrap this one up then. And we've got a lot more coming for you next week as well.
So happy holidays in the meantime.
Happy holidays. Yep. Yeah, it'll be Christmas already by then. Well, if you're celebrating with family, friends, hope you're enjoying yourself. Take some time out. And make sure you listen to NIA though, obviously. You got to put that in the ear on the train home, the car ride home. We got you covered. So make sure you lock in for the next one, because this is always a banger too, the wrap up of the year. And we'll throw in some AMA as well. Speak next week.